Hello, welcome back. We're working on Gem Wars. We're working on the multiplayer for it. The first thing that I want to do is I want to be dispatching my events and games from the server as opposed to sending them from the client and then registering them. We do need to have both. Types of submissions in there, one from the server and one from the client. So to do that, then that means that I have to introduce this new piece called a move SO, and a move SO is what I used to call my lines. So a move has a type of move type, right? And so you can either play a piece or you can purchase a piece, and that's really it. And so this move instance is also going to have a timestamp that's with it. So now we're translating that logic into the Unity game. What kind of tea am I having today? This, I think, is honey ginseng. So here, what I wanted to do is in my game, when I look at my move, we're going to have this as a move SO. So I'm going to make this a move piece SO. And this will be a move SO. And that's all fine. And then down here, this move SO is not going to have anything on it. Which means we're going to have one more. Which is going to be called a move purchase SO. Good. So then in my events, we have a piece purchased. That's fine. I want to do we're going to look at the request here. This one, you have a move DTO here. So we're going to make another one here called a move piece DTO. And that's going to be a board ID, a piece ID, and the points. If I look over at my request, I guess you're going to store the piece information on piece instance of where this went. So we're going to move these positions like that to be on this. Which means my move instance, you have a move piece instance DTO and a move purchase instance DTO. And that's going to have on it a move type. And then this one's going to be a move instance DTO of a move piece. And then this one is a move purchase of a move instance DTO. Also on here, you want to have a float for your position X and your position Y. So back over here, we have a move, and then we have a move piece, which also is going to have a public float position X and a public float position Y. And that should be it. This, we want to have a public move type called move type. And we'll just put this right here. And the two moves that we have are piece and purchase. My move SO should be abstract, and that should throw some errors for everywhere that's using it. Reward lines DTOs needs to have a move piece ID. Now it says that my move SO no longer has the ID on it. So we're going to fix that. Here. I'm going to have a public virtual void called a init. And then I want to have a instance ID here. Okay, and then in my init, this should have a instance here. And so this one we can now call a init. And right here I want to do a base.init. Reward lines is a move piece SO. This is a move piece ID. This is a move piece SO. Now this moves is a move piece. If I look at my prepare instance DTOs on my move SO. I want this to be a abstract. And this is going to be a moves dot of type move piece SO. This is now called a init. And this gets created up here as a move piece SO. Same thing again here. Right there. There's one more here for a init. Just a few left. This is your moves dot of type move piece SO. So this is going to be of type move piece SO. Same thing here. This is move piece SO. Like that. This needs to be a override. And then the last one was a warning, right? Now right here. Like that. Okay. So back over here now. When I'm receiving a move piece, I don't even see it on here on my list yet. Move instance. This one we want to do a switch on my C, and we want to say case move piece DTO. And then move position or move purchase instance DTO. And this is going to be a move piece instance. And this one's going to be at entities.add new move purchase instance. Just like that. Now on your piece, I'm going to move these properties onto the move piece instance. And now these are going to be a move piece ID, a move piece ID, and a move piece ID. This is a move piece ID, and on my line instance DTO, it's called move piece ID. So just to make sure that's the same, this is called a line DTO. It's going to have a move piece ID. And then also your move piece is going to have a position X and a position Y, and your player or your piece DTO does not. That's a move piece instance ID. And it should build now. Okay, that's good. So now I'm going to open up my SQL server. And in here, I'm going to delete my database. And then I'm going to set my web API as my startup project and go to my code first and delete my migrations, and then in Package Manager console. I'm going to do an add migration for my init on the code first project. Okay. So that's done. Let's go ahead and update my database now. Okay, it's done. So now we can start everything. We need to rewrite my instances to the server. So in the game, not yet, we have to register a user first. So let's do that. We want to fix these two. We can get rid of this position. Now we want to leave that, but we can get rid of these two. And then on my move SO, move piece, I want to add in here my position. Which is your piece.position.x and piece.position.y. We also have one over here, which is called a move piece ID in your line DTO. TCP is for the multiplayer game server. Yep, I'm using Identity Server 4 for the authentication server, authorization server, and then it's initially connecting over HTTP, grabbing the token. The token hands it off to a matchmaking lobby server. There's 3 of those in production. And then that token's introspected against Identity Server. The identity's figured out. The persistent connection is completed. I'm looking for PubSub to hook up with DynamoDB so that I can use AWS instead of another TCP connection for managing the servers. And then we're going to set it up to offload. TCP is better than WebSockets. TCP is just different than WebSockets. WebSockets are newer. They're both persistent connections. They both have the same criteria for authorization. So I could have done this with WebSockets. And since I am passing JSON, it would have been fine to do that. Okay, there we go. So the game's running now. Let's start up the back end. You can see it says it can't connect to the server, so let's wait till it starts. Okay, we're going to enter the desired username. Should register it, connect me to the matchmaking server, and it did. So now I'm going to load my TCP, my game objects to the server, which I do in my mono behavior title manager. Right here, we prep the data, and then I'm going to post it. And then here we're going to do a debug.log for done. This should only take a second. We can go to AWS before we do this. And I'm going to go to my S3 buckets, which are persistent storage. We can open up this one, and we're looking at GemWars. You can see all of the instances here. Oh, these are instances. These are the images that I've uploaded. There's quite a few. So we can select them, go to delete. 17.3 megabytes. And now we can run the game. Everything's getting sent over to the server right now. We can see the load here. There it is, done. And then back in the game code, I can turn this off and this off. And when I look at my S3 bucket now, you can see it has all the objects in it, including the block gems. There's only 36, which is what we're expecting. And now we can connect to the server. There, see? Now, when I look at the back end here, I'm just going to check something in the data access layer. When I do my transaction here, there it is. The entities which are exchanged, there's 68 of them. match player instance, piece instances, no moves. That should work. It did. And there we go. So the next thing that I want to do is we want to start dispatching those events from the back end. So if I look, or from the game. So if I look at my base game manager, when we play a piece, we're going to go player dot add played piece of my lines dot piece. Lines dot so this we can add in here a piece SO piece played. This is going to be a move. I can add in here my args.piece played. And then we can remove this. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to get my DTOs here, which is going to be a args.move.prepare instance DTOs. And we're only going to do this if my globals is online. And then what I want to do called a global manager dot is online. And then I want to do a task dot run asynchronous where we're going to await my TCP manager and we're going to send this message with my DTOs. This submits a move to the server, if online. Okay, we'll run it again. This is my 65 entities one. And now, every time it didn't do it. It didn't get that far. It's saying it doesn't have any DTOs in there. If I look back at Gem Wars, it's on the back end where I'm receiving these in the TCP server. Where's line instance? So in here, we're going to add in a case for my move instance DTO, and then another one for my line instance DTO. And this one, you're going to deserialize this into a base called a move instance DTO. And then I want to switch on my move instance dot move type. And then if it's a piece, we're going to do this for a move piece instance DTO. And this one is a move purchase instance DTO. And this one down here we can do as a line instance DTO. When I look at my variables here for a base DTO, it does have a timestamp. When I look at it here, we need to add in a public date time for my timestamp. And then if I look at my scriptable objects, we can do it faster by just doing a equals a date time.utc now. Server's running. We'll run it again. We'll do open play. This is all of my objects. 72 of them. And it writes them. We get our play. We get our move type. We added our DTOs. Piece instance DTO. I don't have a piece instance defined. So that's going to error. We're just calling this a piece ID. So let's try it again. And this is what, an instance DTOs? Okay, try it again. Everything's starting. I'm going to fix those warnings though. We'll give it a run. Okay, that's done. Now in the game, we'll run it again. Okay, we're going to do a open play. When I look at this, it's got a position and everything, but the piece ID was nothing. So back in the code, your move piece, your piece ID equals piece dot instance ID, right? And then your move type is piece. Run that again. Okay, that's good. That's good. Here's our next one. We did get a piece ID. Okay, we're going to create the instance. We save it and we commit our transaction and it worked. Okay. We have another type of move that we need to implement, which is a purchase. And that goes with a draw piece. And then a draw should be connected to a board. Crap. So a draw instance, if I look at the game itself, that's per board. So in this, you want to have a board instant GUID for my board instance ID, and that's on a draw instance. And a board is going to have any number of draws. Okay. The board should have a match that it's a part of. So let's go add this before I forget. So this one was a draw piece, right? Builder.entity draw piece instance has one board instance with many draws. And this is just a draw instance. And we want to say is unique is false. On delete, we want to restrict it. And then I also want to have my index on the board instance ID, and you want to say is unique is false. Okay. Now, one other thing that I noticed was that your match needs to have a number of these board instance. Which needs to have a match instance called match instance. Like that. Okay, so now in the context again, underneath board, do I not have it on here? But a board also has a number of board SOs, so it's got to be here. Guess not. So here, we're going to do this for a board instance. Has one board SO ID with many board instances. And then you also are going to have another one for match instance. And then you want to have your indexes here on board instance called match instance ID. And then the other one is this one for board SO ID. Okay. So down here in your DTOs, for your board instance, we want to have a GUID for my match instance ID, just called match ID. And then in your translation, match instance equals C dot match ID. And now in the front end, this needs to have a string for the match ID. And we'll add it in here. When you add this board, it needs to have a match. So we'll have a protected match SO called match. And then where you create the board, we want to say board.setMatch to be this. That should do it. Okay. The other thing that I noticed was when I serialize this move piece SO, it's doing it for all of these DTOs. So let's take a look at the back end again. Because you should have these line instances coming through. So we run it. We're going to do open play. I'm waiting to see what comes in this time. So what I've received here is a message struct with only one piece of JSON in it. So this is getting invoked. See, I don't think I need these ones. Because this is getting sent from the here. Okay, and now your match does it for each of your boards, which you should have one. So when you're submitting this and on game piece played, you should have already calculated everything. And you have, because you didn't get any lines. So let's get a couple lines. Let's try it again. All right, so now we're going to break on this. Damn it. Here we go. Okay, we look at the message here. We've got more than a couple, which is nice. So if I look, we've got 13. And I should have a move. And then I should have a, what was that? Let's try it again. Okay, here we go. The first one is a move. The second one is a move. It doesn't have an ID. Was it this? ID is never created. This needs to have your instance ID equals GUID.new GUID.toString. And we're going to rename this function init. Try it again. "66 entities, that's right. That's good. That's good. That's good. That one's fine. Here we go. Here's our line. I've got 14 entities. We've got one move piece instance with no lines in it. And then I've got a line instance, which has an ID and a move piece instance. And then these block instances. Now these block instances are probably going to fail, because it's going to say instant pieces column ID. So let's try it again. Okay, this time I've got 14. One block gem instance. So what you can do is up here, we're going to add another one here called entities to add and then entities to update. So if you get a game instance, if your await context.any asynchronous, we're going to say var existing game instance equals a await context.game games.first or default asynchronous, where my ID is equal to c.id. If my existing game instance does not equal to null, then it's an update. Otherwise, it's this. We're going to do a existing game instance dot can't change the game type. You can't change your game player instances here. Can't change your round instances here or your tier instances. So we can change this and say if there isn't any asynchronous where the ID is equal to ID, then you can add it. Okay, same thing here. We're going to do a var existing round instance equals await context dot rounds dot first or default asynchronous x where my ID equals c dot ID. If my existing round instance is not equal to null, then we want to do this, else we want to do this. So this one is existing round instance dot, let's see what we can change here. Nothing. So same thing. If there isn't any rounds that match it, then you'll add it. Same thing here for match, and I can just look at these properties now. Can't change any of that. Same thing here for both of these. Except this one is tiers what? Do I not have tier gem chance instance? Right. Tier gem chances. And this is tier color chances. Same with your board. Okay, this is where it starts to get a little different with these ones. This is block gems. Okay, here's another one that we're missing. Block gem instance called blocks gems. And this is the one which changes. So it's going to be this. This is a var block instance equals await blocks first or default asynchronous. If my block instance does not equal to null, then we can set a few properties to update it. Otherwise, we're going to do this. So this is going to be a block instance dot position x equals c dot position x, block instance dot position y equals c dot y position. And let me double check that that's correct in the front end. And then here we're going to do entities to update my block instance. Your draw instance we're going to switch here on this C and do case draw piece instance DTO. And then on this one, you want to say that if your await context.draw pieces so here you're going to have a new one called draw piece instance. So you're going to have a draw instance here for draws, and then a new draw piece instances for draws pieces. Then we're going to add this one in here. Now we can actually move this up here, and I can say if my draws.any async if there isn't any asynchronous of that, then you can do this switch and then add it. Okay, you have a game player instance. Nothing there can change. So if my await context.game players.any asynchronous x where my ID equals c.id. And then for lines, you only get to input that one time. So same thing, if my lines, then we're going to add that in there. Match player is the same. Okay, move instance. If my await context.moves.any asynchronous x where my ID is equal to c.id. Piece instance, same thing, nothing can change. So if I look at my context here, we need to have a new table here for piece instance called pieces. Like that. Your reward instance, nothing can change on that. So if my await context.pieces.any asynchronous x where my ID is equal to c.id. So if it doesn't exist, then we're going to add my instance. And then here you're going to do a update range for my entities to update. And now I can set this as my startup project and do a add migration, and we're going to say added missing entities. And then we can do an update database. And it says matches and match instance ID. So let's go back out here and try this again. And we'll add a new migration called init. And we want to do an update database. Perfect. Now we can start everything up. We can start the game up. Okay, we'll add a username. Okay, now we're going to add in our objects from the title manager. Just takes a second. Give it a second to finish. Okay, and now get rid of that and this. Run it again. And we'll do this as a open play. And now the data access layer, here we go. Entities to add should be like 60 something, and entities to update is 0. So when I make a piece, entities to add is 1, entities to update is, that's fine. We're just trying to get a line here. Okay, entities to add. It's got the move piece, the line, and all the blocks. The blocks have a piece instance, but it doesn't look like I'm ever creating the piece. Right. So you are there and here. Because the pieces are new, so we need to add a new one in here called move draw instance DTO. And that's going to have a piece ID. And then it's going to have a player ID, but we already know that. That's it. So in my entities, we're going to make a move draw instance, which is it's going to have a piece attached to it. And it has to have a piece, and a piece may have, so it's optional, a move draw instance ID, because it could just be on the board. And then we want to have here a move draw instance draw piece instance. Wouldn't a draw piece instance be the same thing? Draw piece instance ID. Draw piece instance. And isn't your move piece instance, you only get one move for it? So that's even the same one again. Your draw will tell you what board it's on. Your move piece will tell you How do you know what board you're on? So let's add this move piece instance ID here. So you could move it. It could have been a draw. It could have been drawn. It could have been drawn by a player. A move needs to be connected to an application user match player or something like that, right? This is going to be, it could have been on the board as a draw piece. It could have been moved, and it could be owned by other players. Match player instance. That means that you could start it with those, so we don't really want it like that. We want this to go onto a piece instance is going to go onto a player. A game player. Okay. That tells me who owns the piece. And then it tells me if it was drawn. This is who owns the piece if it is owned. This is the owner of the piece, the player owner. And then your blocks. Now your board your move draw instance and your move piece instance both have a board on it, right? So we're going to make a new one called a move board instance. Which is only going to have a board instance ID and a board instance. And this is going to have a number of these board instance called board instances. Okay. And then a move draw instance has a piece instance. I think it should have a draw instance, which has a piece attached to it, right? So this is a draw piece instance ID. Okay, hold on one second here. So here, your move draw instance needs to have a, if I look at this piece, my move draw instance isn't here. And the draw if it is and that's a draw piece. Which makes your move draw piece draw piece instance. Your here, your piece. Where is that? I don't see where piece is at. There. So your piece can either have a owner. It could have been placed on the board as a draw piece here. Or it could have been moved. So if it was a draw piece, then it could also have a move draw instance. Right. And that's optional. Your move draw instance has a draw piece instance ID on it. Now we do know that the move is always going to have a, let's start here and rebuild the database. So now here my draw piece is going to have a new, we don't need this anymore. Or that one. Match player instance is now a game player instance. And then if I look at this thing, number of match player instances, which has got a number of match instances. Many to many. Has a number of boards. A board has a number of draws. This doesn't look right. A board can't have a number of board instances on it. It's got the match. And then it's going to have a number of moves on it, right? So each move is going to have a GUID for the board instance ID, and then another one for the board instance. And also, it's going to have a match player ID. And then a match player instance, which is going to have on it a number of move instances. Which means that in the application database context, I want to say move instance has one board instance with many moves, and we want to say on delete restrict, and then you want to say builder dot entity of my move instance has an index called board instance ID. And then we're going to do this one more time. for the match player. It's called match player instance ID. So just if I'm looking at this one more time just to make sure that these structures are right. We have a game which has a number of rounds, tiers, and game players. And a game player has a game instance, a player, a number of pieces. I think that would actually be a number of moves. Over here, my game player has a number of these moves. And this needs to have a game player instance ID. But you can get the game player from the match player, so it's redundant. Which means if we leave game player here with a number of these pieces, so when I look at the match players, they have a game instance and a match instance, and then a number of moves that were made during the match. So these are pieces that you own. These are moves that you've made. Let's go ahead and rebuild this. So now here, when you look at your piece instance, draw piece instance ID is something. Game player instance ID is something. And move piece instance ID is something. Which means here in your piece instance, I want to have a draw piece instance ID. So this will be a draw piece ID. And then you want to have a game player ID. And then you want to have a move piece ID. Feels a little redundant. So what I mean by that is, starting at the top, you have a game instance which has a number of these game players in it. And they have a number of matches. So here you're attaching it to a player. And you're saying that the game player has a number of pieces. And I believe I can get rid of that because my match player if I look at board, my match player needs to have on it a number of boards. So you need to have another one here called match player board instance. And this needs to be a match player ID. And then a board instance ID. Now, each one of these moves needs to be on a match player board instance called match player boards here. And this is called match player boards. And your moves are no longer there. because now it's just going to have a match player board instance. Like that. Like that. So now each one of the boards is matched, each one of the moves is matched up to a match player board, which has a match player, which has a game player, which is our player. Because this is your match against them. And then here are your boards. So it's going to be a number of board instances with your player. And each player is going to have a number of moves like that. Okay, if I look at the rounds, they have a game and a round SO. They have a number of matches and tiers. If I look at the matches, the tiers are not right here. Because they are on these matches. But a match has a number of match player instances. You're also going to have a number of boards in the instance. With draws and match players. Boards, which is this. Which is going to have a number of moves. Hey, Crystallizes, how are you doing? Welcome back. It's good to have you with us. So now when I look at a board move instance, it has one match player board instance with many moves and a match player board instance ID. And then up here, your piece has just a draw piece instance. So you don't need this one because it's just one. Same thing with this move. Piece instance. And now you have one more here, which is this match player instance. That should be fine. Why don't I see that? Okay, we'll add it in here as a match player instance has one match instance with many match player instances, and we'll restrict it. And then we want to do this for my match instance ID. And then we want to do it again for the game player instance. All right, game player instance ID against this one. And then this one is a ID and this one is not. And then the next one is this match player board instance, which is a match player instance. With many match player board instances. And then this one here is the next one. And we want to do that for my match player instance ID. And the last set is board instance. Okay, and then on your move instance, I already have that one. Match player board instance ID. Okay, let's rebuild it. Over here on my piece instance, draw piece, piece, move piece. Your game player ID goes away. Because that's contained in here. Yeah. So in my piece instance DTO, I can get rid of my game player ID. Well, where did it go? Okay, let's make sure I didn't break anything. I refresh the database here. GemWars is not there. We'll set this as my startup project. Get rid of my migrations folder. Do an add migration init. It says move draw instance and draw piece instance. Move draw instance has a draw piece instance on it. Move draw instance ID has the move draw instance here. What? All right, that's weird. So in the application database context, move piece looking for the draw piece instance. We want to add in this move draw instance ID. So builder.entity of my draw piece instance. I want to say entity framework fluent API optional 1-to-1. Core. When was this? I don't want that one. Entity framework core fluent API optional 1-to-1. Has one with one. Has one. Move draw instance. With one. Move draw instance. called draw piece instance required false. Try it again. That should be required. Hi. What's up, baby? Okay, I'll see you when you get back. Thank you. I'll see you when you get back. Love you too. Move instance here. Number of these move instances. Draw piece instance. Piece instance has a draw piece instance and then a move piece instance. Right. So a draw instance has a board. And then the draw it's connected to, the piece, and then a potential move, which connects to a match player board instance. That looks right. I don't understand what the problem is. Before I forget, let's go to the application database context and we can delete that little bit with the optional crap that we don't need. Is it because of this? If I get rid of that, does it fix it? Nope. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a short break. I'll be back in 15 minutes. When we come back, we'll finish our action dispatching. The way it's set up now is when the game starts, you'll have 3 actions each for each one of your draws. Every time you draw from the pile, that's an action. If you purchase, that's an action. And if you make a move, that's an action. And those will be what we'll dispatch from the TCP server and then handle. So thanks for staying with me. I'll see you guys in just 15 minutes.